Us, Lord, as leaders tonight, Lord, do our due diligence and exercise in our abilities, Lord. We pray for the citizens of this city, the citizens of this state. And Lord, we pray for calmness. We pray for understanding. We pray, Lord, for one thing: united we stand, divided we fall. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I want to thank everybody for their attendance here tonight. Item 1.3, approval of minutes from the regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen held August 19, 2025. Have a motion by Alderman Trotter, have a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? If we're ready to vote, let's vote. Anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Very good. Item 1.4, we're entering our public comment period. I believe we have 4 people here that would like to speak in the public comment period. I will call your name. You will come to the podium there. You'll have 2 minutes. If you would, speak up where everyone can hear you. We'll first call David Fouth.
My name's David Felt. I live at 402 Bourne Street. I just wanted to come up here tonight and show support for the proposed legislation discussions you all have had on the South Main and cafe overlaying sidewalk obstruction legislation. I'm a big proponent of downtown walkable spaces, especially ones that are unique. One of the main reasons we picked Springfield when we moved to Tennessee was for the square and for the beauty in it. And additionally, the city itself has invested thousands of dollars in the 5 years we've been here for ADA improvements, city beautification, from banners to crosswalks to decorations, new signage, landscaping. And these downtown business owners are simply adding to that ambiance, as well as creating lively and attracting pedestrian traffic and business to the downtown. In the last few years, we've seen substantial private investment with 4 local restaurants that have thrived downtown, numerous stores that have made it more than a few years, a ton of renovation downtown that with no input from the city outside of the investments we've already made in the infrastructure. Just a couple of comments that you guys had last month. The ADA accessibility, that's kind of regulated by the ADA. We've done a lot of ADA improvements already with the crosswalks, the intersections. I've seen plenty of people in wheelchairs and walking side by side when these decorations have been out and not been affected. The risk of theft, I don't know that there's ever been a report. At least none of the businesses I've seen ever lock up anything outside, and nothing seems to go missing. And then the excessive signage is already regulated in a signage ordinance, so I don't see that being an issue. But I really think before this crackdown, there wasn't really any issues or fears that had manifested. This is simply just bringing up to code something that should be adjusted, and we could look at amending the cafe overlay zone and zoning ordinance to amend that. Oh, sorry. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, David.
Yep.
Next, if Jessica Herndon would come up. You can kind of track your time by the screen there, Jessica.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jessica Herndon. I'm the owner of Public House here on the square. Firstly, I want to thank you for representing us and hearing out your constituents, which is so meaningful in a small town. You've likely noticed several citizens, business owners, and interested onlookers here for the same reason. We are discouraged, disappointed, and panicked over your latest vote against allowing signage and decor. This is not a political controversy, and we are not here to prove a point. This is a whole town begging for immediate change. Let's see. This is a petition started by my dear friend Jessica Davis, containing 1,100 signatures in support of this movement. Did you know that a substantial fraction of walk-in business comes from our curb appeal? We know this because small business owners are interacting with our guests daily. Have you talked to any small business owners you represent lately about these struggles? If you have, you know our walk-in sales have taken a hit already. We're seeking action on this today. Many of the businesses on our square may not be able to make it 3 months or even 30 days to see a prolonged deliberation on this matter. TABC regulations and ADA compliance will still be met even with our signage and decor. We have heard arguments ranging from there not being enough space for multiple wheelchairs at once, which, as you can see, if that is the standard we measure by, the city building has some updates to do. Profane messages or images on our signs, that would certainly be counterproductive to welcoming guests. And lastly, that there may be an uptick in police resources of items stolen from our displays. I have yet to find evidence of any report of that nature. Mr. Hubbard, Trotter, Gregg, Harris, Mrs. Bradley, Holloman, and Mayor Poole, your prompt attention to this matter will directly impact every small business on our beloved square and may even make or break our success or failure. I implore you to help our small business community by immediately voting to make this change tonight. At the very least, do not enforce this penalty, any penalty upon us for decorating our business to attract guests. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kenneth Huckabee. Is Kenneth here? We'll move on to our last speaker, Mr. Sam Ramsey. Are you here? Yes. Would you come forward, please, Sam? You can track your time there on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank all of you for the hard work you do for the city and for what you are entertaining tonight. As many of you very well may know, Sandy and I used to own Burdett's, or I should say I was the maintenance man, she owned and ran Burdett's. We still own the building though, and that's for a public house, as Jessica just indicated, that's where she is now. And obviously, we want to do everything we can to be successful, to have public house, have other merchants, have other restaurants be able to thrive. We've been here before. I can't remember the year. I'm sorry, I'm sleeping every once in a while now, and as a result, I've forgotten. But at one time, we came before the mayor and aldermen, we being the merchants in the city for the overlay. And at that time, sidewalk tables and also sandwich boards were discussed, and where sidewalks can accommodate that, then we said, okay, or more importantly, the city said, okay, you can do that. And so that's been going on for some time now, and of course, obviously, that has changed. So, clearly the merchants, the restaurants want to drive and drive sales, to increase business, to be attractive. As our city and downtown has grown, you've made investments, so have we as of course, entrepreneurs and private owners of businesses. And so, as a result of that, Sandy and I were trying to recall, Burdett's over our 20 years raised about, I think, about $75,000 in sales tax over that 20-year period, business tax, utilities, etc. These other businesses today are doing even better, I am sure. So we humbly ask you to consider and support this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. At this time, we'll close our public comment period, and we'll move into item 1.5, our public hearing. Our first item on public hearing is ordinance 25-15, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-08 relative to the adoption of the 2021 building code. Anyone here to speak to that? Hearing none, we'll move to our second one. Ordinance 25-16, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-12 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Conservation Code. Anyone here to speak to that? Item 3, ordinance 25-17, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-16 relative to the adoption of the 2021 existing building code. Anyone here to speak to that? Item 4, ordinance 25-18, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-14 relative to the adoption of the 2021 gas code. Anyone to speak to that? Item 5, ordinance 25-19, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-10 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Mechanical Code. Anyone here to speak to that? Number 6, ordinance 25-20, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-09 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Plumbing Code. Anyone care to speak to that? Item 7, ordinance 25-21, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-11 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Property Maintenance Code. Anyone here to speak to that item? Item 8, ordinance 25-22, an ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-13 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Fire Code. Anyone here to speak to that item? Item 9, ordinance 25-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 24-10 regarding retail electric rates. Anyone to speak to that item? Item 10, ordinance 25-25, an ordinance amending Chapter 12 of the Springfield zoning ordinance relative to non-conforming uses. Anyone to speak to that item? Seeing none. This time, we will close our public hearing. Moving on to our legislative branch. Item 2.1, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-15 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-08 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Building Code. We have a motion by Alderman Bradley. We have a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, are we ready to vote? Let's vote. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.2, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-16 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-12 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Energy Conservation Code. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Bradley. Anyone have any questions or comments? If not, we are ready to vote. Let's vote. Does anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.3, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-17 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-16 relative to the adoption of the 2021 existing building code. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.4, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-18 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-14 relative to the adoption of the 2021 gas code. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, and we have a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.5, discuss and possibly take action on the ordinance 25-19 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-10 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Mechanical Code. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Bradley. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.6, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-20 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-09 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Building Code. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Bradley. Any questions or comments? not, are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.7, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-21 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-11 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Property Maintenance Code. We have a motion by Alderman Holloman, a second by Alderman Hubbard. Any questions or comments?
Comment. Citizens, please comply and clean up your properties. That's all I have to say.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.8, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-22 on second and final reading, and ordinance rescinding ordinance 23-13 relative to the adoption of the 2021 Fire Code. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.9, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-24 on second and final reading, and ordinance amending ordinance 24-10 regarding retail electric rates. We have a motion by Alderman Bradley, a second by Alderman Hubbard. Any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.10, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-25 on second and final reading, and ordinance amending Chapter 12 of the Springfield zoning ordinance relative to non-conforming uses. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.11, discuss and possibly take action on ordinance 25-26 on first reading, an ordinance amending the conditions of service manual for national gas services. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Trotter. I believe City Manager Ryan Martin would like to speak to this.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is an update to the conditions of service manual for the natural gas utility. A lot of these policies haven't been updated since the 90s, which means a lot of the fees haven't been updated since the 90s. Our gas director, Benji Davis, went through this, and you can see at the very back of your packet, should be the last couple of pages there, you'll see a cost analysis. Our ratepayers were not getting the investment or return on the investment in because of the cost of steel pipe and plastic pipe has gone up, and so we're recommending an overhaul to the conditions of service manual. Those changes are redlined, I'm sure you saw in your packet, and then the fees are broken down for you on the last, any fee change is broken down for you on the last page, and if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer those.
Any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.12, discuss and possibly take action on Resolution 25-15, resolution accepting a tourism matching grant from the Tennessee Department of Tourist Development. Have a motion by Alderman Trotter, a second by Alderman Hubbard. Any questions or comments?
We have a lovely town, and I've met several people who visited it and they comment on it, okay? So let's just keep building Springfield. Let's just do our individual part to make the city a nice place to come visit and to live.
Anything else? Any other questions, comments? If not, are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item-
Mayor, how much was that grant for? Do anybody know off the top of their head, the matching grant?
Yeah, $17,000.
Okay, thank you.
Item 2.13, discuss and possibly take action on Resolution 25-16, a resolution adopting an economic impact plan for the Vesper Village development area. We have a motion by Alderman Trotter, a second by Alderman Hubbard. I believe Mr. Tom Trent is here, attorney for the development group. Would you come forward, sir?
Hello, everybody. I'm Tom Trent. I'm an attorney with Bradley Gator at both companies in Nashville. And I practice economic development law, which is a little niche area. And we're here to request the approval of the economic impact plan for the Vesper Village tax increment financing area. The Industrial Development Board that you set up a number of years ago has approved this plan and is referring it to you for approval. And if you approve it, then it will be referred to the county for their approval, at which time the tax increment financing plan will be adopted. The way these work, just very briefly, is that the city and the county, upon adoption of the plan, will be enabling the incremental increase in property taxes generated by the development, minus the portion of your budget every year that's allocated to debt service, can be used as an incentive to reimburse the development team for certain public infrastructure costs. So simply stated, no dollars that you currently have in your budget are going to this. Only the increased dollars and only a portion of those. By statute, you have to retain the amount of those currently being received from the property. And the portion of your budget every year as it changes, it goes towards debt service. So you keep that, and then the amount over that, we're contemplating a 70-30 split. So you get 30% of the amount in addition to those deductions. And 70% of the difference can go to pay for the cost of the public infrastructure. So what does that mean? Simply stated, rather than rebuilding the road that will connect across this property, and I understand you're well aware of it from all your approvals of the planning and zoning effort. Instead of using new money to build that, the developer has to front the cost, take the risk that the development goes through along a time frame that works, creates the increment, and reimburses them for those costs of that road, and other public infrastructure costs that are budgeted under the statute, which are things like parks, trails, greenway. But they're all public infrastructure under the statute. And based on that, we don't have to get state approval because the state is in favor of using this for public infrastructure. They changed the statute last summer so that the money can go for that and for the industrial development for that without that is their project by itself. So it's very positive. It shifts all the risk to them. You don't have to issue your bonds for it. If the Industrial Development Board then issues bonds, that is non-recourse to the IUB, non-recourse to the city, non-recourse to the county. What that means is that if this doesn't work, you don't have to take time to do it. It's all in the developer's back. So these are very simple projects once they're approved, because all in the world that happens is you take your share of the money that comes in, base tax, dedicated tax, 30%, remaining 70% go to repay. It goes to the IDB, they put it in a bank account, and the lender or the developer has the right to submit proof that they finished. of the required infrastructure, and then it can be repaid from the neighborhood. It's pretty straightforward. It happens once a year, and so it's relatively simple to implement. We also have in here that to the extent that you incur costs, so to administer this, 5% of the increment, up to 5% of the increment can be used to reimburse the city, the government, and IDB costs, which is under our statutes too. So I don't want to take too much of your time giving you that big agenda here, but that's the basics of the deal. If you read the economic impact plan or the attached economic impact analysis that was done by Aldermen Associates, it says that they expect about a $5.2 billion economic impact, which is pretty impressive, and that the return on investment by the community, city and county, is about $3.09 every dollar put in. Now, what's interesting about that is that $3.09 would normally be per dollar that goes to the project, and on most of the bills, the project would be a manufacturing plant, an office building, a headquarters, a grocery store. Here, it's all public infrastructure that you want anyway. So it's really all the money is going in favor of the community. So if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them. I can give a lecture for 3 or 4 hours. I would like to ask you to be okay if Jason from Barsh Design can come up and tell you just a little bit more about what the required public infrastructure is. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jason.
Jason, would you state your name and who you represent?
No problem. Jason Rapture, Barge Design Solutions, representing the developer for Western. Again, appreciate you guys taking the time to look at this with us and kind of move forward. So want to kind of piggyback on what Tom's already kind of laid out as a basis for how we came up with the cost ratios and where things are going. So again, anybody. So we'll start off with just, an overall, Tom mentioned it, basically what is, the area. So if you go through, the plan, where's the planned area? It's the 512 acres that we basically rezoned recently, put into the SP. So no changes there. It's just, defining that's the area where we're going to get the uplift for that increment from the current property tax that's on those properties right now to what could occur in the future. So again, Tom mentioned it, I think you guys have seen this, $5.2 million impact. Billion, sorry. It's a B, it's more than an issue. Yeah, exactly. Again, over 1,700 jobs, they'll be permanent with the development. Construction, over 6,000 as it goes through. New property taxes, $136 million, that's both city and county. All local taxes generated 198. So again, a pretty big impact for this development. And one of the key notes here is that city and county property taxes right now are only sitting at $59,000 to change. The city side of that is only slightly less than 17. So when we start talking about some other numbers going through this, that's going to change to $3.1 million per year for the city alone, compared to 16. So kind of looking through those over a 20-year period. I'm just going to stick with the city side on this for now. So real estate over that time frame, new real estate property taxes, $41.8 million. You've got basically local sales taxes from all the different aspects that come in at 33.5. Debt service is dedicated $2.5 million. Other available taxes that you guys are going to generate over that time frame, 11.9. And again, that annual projected property tax increase, as we get to full build out, is $3.1 million every year going through time at the current tax rate. Increase that number goes up. And we put in Robertson County, so there's been lots of different things, how does this affect schools, you see where they're getting their taxes when it comes down to their portion, that 32.8, that's dedicated to come out. That's $31 million towards schools, dedicated per their statutes right now. There's another $15.9 million for them to basically look at other school activities, whether maybe they need more sheriffs, whatever it may be, but there's another $15.9 million that comes out of that, over that initial 20. So what are we here talking about? It's the ask. What are we asking for with this increment financing? And basically, we looked at that ratio out there of a 3-to-1, in this case, 3.09. So 3.09 to 1. We're asking for your $1 invested, you're going to get $3 and some change back, and that number is 27.5. So that's where the $27.5 million, comes from. Because as we go to the next page, you'll see that just the construction cost for public infrastructure. So the boulevard, constructing the boulevard, regional traffic pattern improvements, regional stormwater drainage, extension of the greenways is $30.3 million. And that's not including engineering, land, any of the other costs that go with it. That is just the base construction cost. So we're not even asking for the full amount. We're asking for a portion of it. If we were looking at just the boulevard, and we were looking at the land costs, everything else put together, it's a $24 million item. So we've got a little bit to play with afterwards to say, okay, we're going to get some of the greenways paid for, we're going to get some of the sidewalks paid for, we're going to get some of the park stuff done. So it is a minimal ask compared to the overall cost of the project. So as we look at this and go, what's included, what's not, we want to make sure that everybody's still there. So this is the required construction. We're going to build the boulevard. So that boulevard is going to get built. It's going to get built in a 5-year period of time based on the plan and the information that's in it. It's got 2 pieces that have to be built in the 3 years. We've talked about that before. The first initial phases on the east and the west. So those initial thirds have a 3-year time window to get to substantial completion. And then we're going to make sure we have a connection between those two. And if you go 2 slides forward. 3, sorry, I missed it. We will make sure that that center portion of the middle portion of the boulevard is complete so that it goes all the way through. So in 5 years, there'll be a connection from 49 all the way to 431. And so that's really the topics we've talked about to say what are we going to do and what are the time frames. They're tied to this ability for getting some incentive to be able to do that in the time frames that we've been talking about to basically incentivize us to get that built and get it moving forward. So why is this good for everybody? And the real thing, and I think Tom mentioned it, is this is private money. I know there's a lot of stuff out there saying, it's somebody else, it's tax money being given to them or anything else. That's absolutely not true. It is all of this is being built with the developer's money. They have to go out and borrow or pull it out of their bank account to build the boulevard. They have to build everything to move this thing forward. And as a parcel or a building, and I'll go with a motel goes up on the corner. When that motel comes up on the corner, things change. The tax base, the property tax base of that corner changes. That increment going from, we'll call it $100 to $100,000 is that increment we're talking about that Tom mentioned that we can then attempt to tap into in order to pay back the developer, essentially, for that coming through. So that's kind of that's the process here. And in the meantime, as Tom mentioned, you're still getting 30% to pay for, new police, fire, everything else that's coming through. That's still coming in. The original tax base, it didn't change. You're still getting what was there originally, but you're getting more. You're getting that 30%, and once that particular parcel comes out, then it all goes to the city after that 20-year period that's been brought into it. In the meantime, you're still getting still getting sales tax. So if somebody's in that motel and buys Coke and a package of crackers, that sales tax is your motel tax all years, not associated with the payback of the tips at all. So it's just really a good way to have a mechanism to basically get the infrastructure you guys are looking for without impacting the city or the citizens at all, or the county. It doesn't impact at all. It's pleasing.
So I find it helpful for you to see this before I finish, but I'd like you to know, people who buy property in that first slide in the gray area, the plan area, people who rent a shopping center space, a haircutter, nail salon, it doesn't impact them at all, because everybody just pays the tax they would otherwise pay. It's just how we're going to divide the tax up after it's paid that this is about. So in a pilot, in a little tax deal, you're removing the property from the tax roll. This is the opposite. Instead of abating the tax by removing it in a pilot, you're in essence rebating a portion of the tax to pay for the public infrastructure. If you had borrowed the money to put this road in the decade or two when you got the ability to do it, or the world dollars, the interest or inclination, it would be the general obligation bond typically. And that means that it would be tested on your credit rating. And you'd be responsible for paying it, and that could cause an increase in property taxes. This does not. This is not on your credit, it's on the credit of the developer. So that's a huge difference, and that's why we're doing a lot of this. So we wanted to open this up for questions if that's appropriate, Mayor. And otherwise, we're going to review the resolution that we take us to the county. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Thank you, gentlemen. We have a motion by Alderman Trotter, a second by Alderman Hubbard. No questions, no comments. Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Does anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Moving on to item 2.14, discuss and possibly take action on resolution 25-17, a resolution authorizing financing through the state revolving fund program for the construction of the new wastewater treatment plant. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holman. Any questions or comments?
City Manager.
Yes, sir. So this is, you've all done part one of the SRF resolution, which was previously, because you remember when we first set out to start the wastewater treatment plant, it was going to be a $35 million project. And so the initial application that we had submitted to the state revolving fund was for a certain amount. Once the bid came back, and it came back a lot higher than our original estimate, we've got to go back and you all authorize the application for the additional amount to be able to pay for the remainder of the plant. That's what this is for.
Any other questions or comments? We ready to vote?
Yes, sir.
Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 2.15, discuss and possibly take action on resolution 25-18, a resolution of the correction for the fiscal year of 2026 budgetary exhibits submitted to the state of Tennessee Comptroller of the Treasury. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Bradley. Any questions or comments on this item? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Moving on to our administrative portion of our agenda, item 3.1, discuss and possibly take action on the adjustment of the retail electric rates of Springfield Electric Department due to the wholesale fuel cost adjustments by the Tennessee Valley Authority. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holman. I believe Electrical Director, Mr. Terry Risha, you have the floor.
Lower by 7.74%.
Good. Any questions or comments from Mr. Terry?
We're well pleased with the lorry.
We ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 3.2, discuss and probably take action on the adjustment of the monthly gas rates of the Springfield Gas Department. I have a motion by Alderman Trotter, a second by Alderman Bradley. Gas Director, Mr. Benji Davis.
Purchase gas adjustment saw a decrease of 0.5 cents, resulting in an
across the board decrease of 0.74%.
Good. Any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.3, discuss and possibly take action on an agreement in the amount of $350,000 with the Community Development Partners, LLC, to provide administrative service for the construction of the new wastewater treatment plant. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments?
Mayor,
Mr.
have
Hayes?
we already borrowed money so far, Mr. Mark?
No, sir. So that's the resolution you all just approved is for the remaining application for, to fund the plant, we're using a portion of ARPA funds. I think that's around $8 million. I don't have that budget in front of me, but about $8 million. We're going to have to borrow the rest of that. There is some principal forgiveness on the SRF loan because it is an infrastructure upgrade project, because the state has encouraged those infrastructure upgrades to take place. But the remainder of the funds we borrowed, not by the issuance of a bond, but through the state revolving fund. The interest rate's a lot lower through the state of Tennessee revolving loan fund.
So like this 350, would that come out of money we already have?
It'll come out of that borrowed money.
Out of that borrowed money?
It will, yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? If not, are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 3.4, discuss and possibly take action on a traffic safety grant from the State of Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments? Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their votes? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 3.5, discuss and possibly take action on a recommendation from the Traffic Committee regarding on-street parking on Hillside Drive. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. Any questions or comments?
That's weird. That's weird.
Are we ready to vote? Let's cast our votes. Anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 3.6, discuss and possibly take action on an agreement with U.S. Bank to participate in a purchasing card program under the NASPRO Cooperative Purchasing Contract. We have a motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Holloman. I believe City Manager Ryan Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this is a contract to participate in U.S. Bank's purchasing card program. This is something that several cities in Tennessee, the NASPO agreement is a purchasing collaborative agreement, so it's like buying something off a state contract, right? We are significantly and severely behind, as most governments are. It is 2025, and we do not have the ability to purchase off of a card that doesn't have my name on it in my wallet right now. So we use my personal card for a lot of purchases. We use other employees' personal cards, and the city reimburses them. Used to, vendors would take purchase orders, right? And we lived in that age, in that era where vendors would take purchase orders. And as government, we operated off of a three-ply, three-part purchase order. You had the white copy, the yellow copy, and the pink copy, right? And we just don't live in that age anymore. And now if you don't pay for it, they're not shipping it, right? So we're forced to do one of two things. Either we use our personal cards and get reimbursed by the city for a purchase, and sometimes that's upwards of $3,000 or $4,000, right? Or we end up having to buy a more expensive item, which is not right by the taxpayers, right? That's not being good stewards of taxpayer money. So most governments and cities have moved to this, a long time ago. We may be a little late to the party, but the purchasing card program is it'll be very strictly regulated, very strictly confined. There is not an employee will not be personally liable for backing anything, but an employee who happens to make a purchase or something like that, that's not, that's be a disciplinary action up to and including termination. So we will manage that very closely. All employees will not be issued cards. The tentative plan now is that there will be 2 cards per department that the department head and 1 designee will be responsible for. There will be a policy and a program where they sign those cards out. We'll know exactly who has it and when, to make sure that there is no mismanagement. There will be limits, a very tight limit on a card where a large purchase cannot be made unless it's a one-time authorization, right? There could be a one-time authorization to raise the limit on that particular card for a purchase that needs to be made. But we've noticed a lot of issues where we're trying to find vendors that'll take a purchase order, and you kind of get laughed at nowadays, right? When you say, will you take a purchase order? And they're like, no, but we'll take a Visa or MasterCard or American Express. So that's where we are. So we would appreciate the board's consideration of this agreement tonight.
Thank you, Brian.
Make a comment.
Mr. Hubbard.
Especially, for the conferences that we are sort of obligated to go to, hotels are not taking checks.
Correct.
I believe they prefer to have a guard. So I'm glad this finally came down the pipe.
Well, I wasn't going to use you as an example, but your conferences go on my personal card, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Any other questions of Mr. Hubbard?
I heard what I do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, are we ready to vote? Let's vote. Anyone care to change their vote? Would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 3.7, discuss and possibly take action on sidewalk obstruction regulations in the Springfield Municipal Code. Have a motion by Alderman Trotter, a second by Alderman Bradley. I believe Alderman Holloman, you asked to put this back on the agenda. Would you like to
Yes.
speak?
Thank you very much. I did ask for this to go back on the agenda. I think we've had a couple of months of discussion about this, and when we declined to approve the ordinance last month, we had a big outpouring of public opinion and support, and kind of, as you can see, I see a lot of friends and neighbors in the audience today. We have a community that's very much in need of us tweaking what we have. Whether or not the proposed ordinance from last month is the solution, that's for the board to consider, but I think it's very clear that we need to revisit that conversation and perhaps take a look again at what we're doing with our sidewalk ordinance. My understanding is that what was happening, not that our wonderful police weren't doing their job, but perhaps we weren't heavily enforcing because there were items that were out on the sidewalks. And so what's happened now is that, we are enforcing the ordinance as it is, and it's disrupting our small merchants. And I am very passionate about our small downtown, and I know most of you all are too. I mean, we love to see it on the first Friday nights, and going there during lunch during the days. I mean, it's the heart of our community, and I don't think it's the intent of anyone on this board to cause harm to it or detract from it. So I just wanted to kind of revisit this conversation to see if there are concerns with the ordinance that was proposed, how can we address those concerns, and put something back on the table that will solve the problem and empower our small businesses. So I would love to hear from the other board members. I know Ryan provided us with a copy of what was previously proposed. I have some thoughts, but again, I think that one of the things that came up as a concern was how do we prevent there being inappropriate banners or political banners and things that might detract from our public spaces. And I did want to mention, I think David Fowl, thank you for bringing this to my attention, but we do have a zoning ordinance already that prohibits and limits religious, political, other sorts of signs like that could be controversial. So in the event that that did happen, and I'm not aware of it being an issue so far, but if it was an issue, we already do have something in our zoning ordinance that would restrict that. So that was one concern. And obviously the ADA compliance is already in place. That's something that's a federal law. We have to comply with it. So if anyone isn't complying, it's already going to be addressed. And I know we've had history of having that happen, and it is being addressed appropriately. So I would just love to hear from the board about any other issues or concerns that you had with the ordinance that was proposed, or if there are any other ideas of how best to move forward.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
talking for me. You stated the two main issues that I had concern about. I do not want us to get off into a political, obnoxious type of crap placed on our city streets, okay? And also, my other concern is let's be cognitive about the ADA issue. And those are the only two things that I'm really concerned about. And last but not least, I love Springfield. Been supported over 30-something years, okay? And so I want us to grow, but I want us to work together. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Tillett. Anyone else? Comment? Go ahead, Tim. Mr. Harris?
First of all, I don't think there's any member of this body that doesn't want to see our city succeed in business, residential-wise, or any other aspect of a prosperous city. Had the opportunity to visit the Franklin Square this past Saturday. They have a very vibrant downtown business. As I was telling the city manager, there's some type of pizza establishment there that there was over 100 people outside waiting to get into it. And but also in noticing, I think when this was brought to us, probably some of their code may have been in part of what was presented to us. So going up and down the various streets that they had there in Franklin, there were several of the businesses that had the bistro tables and the chairs outside. Several of the businesses had the sandwich board advertisements. Did not see very few flags or banners from that aspect. As far as the merchandise end of it, there were two businesses that had, I guess you would call it a rack of clothing or something of that nature, but both of those businesses had an inset to their entrance, and those racks were in the inset. They were not actually out on the sidewalk. As far as seeing any tables or anything of merchandise or anything of that nature, did not see that. When this was brought to us last month, I think that I made the statement then that parts of the presentation I did not have problem supporting. I did have problem supporting some parts of it. From that standpoint, the municipal code that is currently in place, and the city manager can correct me if I'm wrong, this code has been in effect for many years. Nothing has changed from what code has been on the books. Is that correct?
That's correct. It hasn't changed.
This has been a code also that probably has not been strictly enforced as it is written. Because I think as it's written, nothing really is allowed to be out on the city sidewalk at all. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. It's not been a code that has been strictly enforced unless something has presented itself that has required that the codes department or the police department or the city hall take action on it, and then that part of it has been done. I think somewhat over what's happened the last couple of weeks, it has come about, in my opinion, that it looks like maybe this board instructed the city manager to go out and start enforcing this code. That is not what happened. A member of this body came forth to the codes division and asked that a sign be removed from a particular business. They asked that a table and chairs be removed from a particular business, and they asked that something else be removed from a particular business. So in doing that, the city manager was placed into a situation that he could not ask that those items be removed from those three businesses without fully enforcing the code as it is written. And that's what took place from what was requested by a member of this body. I think this body wants to see the city be successful in all avenues, but none of this stuff the last couple of weeks that was asked to be removed would have been asked had this request had not come to the codes department. My understanding was it did fail last month by a vote of 5-2, and that it was probably coming back to this body in some other presentation for approval. Again, I will state, I don't necessarily have any problem supporting the planners, and that's the way it was presented to us first 2 months ago, I believe, that we were talking about some planners. And then when it was asked that it be brought back to us, then it came in with the other items that were in there. I don't have any problem supporting the planners. I don't necessarily have any problem supporting the, I believe you've referred to them as sandwich boards for the advertising part, because if I understood that correctly, they go out when the business is open and they go in when the business is closed. I don't have a problem supporting the small bistro table with the chairs, as long as everything stays within the ADA compliance that we're required to abide by. Some of the language of any law that you do and the society that we live in this day and time, anyone can be sued for anything, that for any reason. I think part of the language that was placed in there, that it would be strictly the responsibility of the business owner that the stuff was out in front of. But if we fall into ADA non-compliance, then the city's going to be sued over anything of that nature. And I don't think we've had that problem over that part of it. But there are aspects of it that I don't have any problem supporting. But I think we all need to understand why the city manager all of a sudden started enforcing the code, because he had no choice but to enforce it as that. I'm perfectly open to discussing it again and supporting any aspects of it. I'm personally, myself, I would rather see us stay away from the banners and the flags, and I would rather see us stay away from merchandise tables and stuff like that out on the street. I don't think that's what we're looking for. The planners, the advertisement, the sandwich board signs, the bistro table, as long as that stays like it's supposed to stay, I don't have any problem with that. But I mean, it is a business area, both retail, both legal, both, offices, everything of that, and to stay within the contour of a beautiful downtown area. That's what my opinion is on it.
Thank you, Alderman Harris. Any other comments?
I'll be brief. I don't have any problem with the bistro, tables, or anything. It was the banners and the flags I was concerned about. I mean, I like some of you will probably find some of the flags and banners offensive. I didn't want that to happen to anyone. Now, the banners, the tables, bistro, and the planners, I'm good with that. But I think we should have been real careful about the flags and the banners that would be hanging out. And to insinuate that this board was against downtown merchants was totally wrong. We were not against it. We were just being careful. Thank you.
If I could just jump in, I wanted to ask the city manager, I know we do have the overlay that addresses flags and things of that nature. Is there any way we could revisit this proposed ordinance to address, I know flags and banners is a very broad statement, and I know I think one business had a banner out that just said sale. So obviously that's not of an offensive nature, but is there some sort of language we could add into the ordinance that really restricts flags and banners to be strictly linked to merchandising of some kind? Or what would you recommend, perhaps, as a...
So, and you mentioned the political part on that. That is, and that's covered under the zoning ordinance. This proposed ordinance from last month would have carved the CC district out of that, right? Okay. So those general zoning regulations would not have applied to the CC district. I think that if there was a way that the city attorney could help us craft language in such a way that it limited those things to sale only, if you get past that, and she would probably add on to this too, if you get past that, then you're probably looking at regulating content of speech, and that's when you're going to run into the First Amendment issues. Another thing comes up is art. Art, and this is a conversation that we had, is art. So say it's, I think in the proposed ordinance, I think it talked about art, or in the flags and banners. Well, you could maybe disguise something offensive in the form of art, right? And so I think that was part of the flags and banners concern, since it was carved out of the general zoning regulations, because I think that's the way Franklin has theirs. But yeah, I think if you could figure out a way to narrowly tailor that, where you could advertise a sale, and I'm giving you time over here to think but I think if you narrowly tailored something, language that did not regulate the content of speech, because that's where you run into the First Amendment
Absolutely,
issues.
that makes sense. And it seems to me that that would be something that's very important to the board and for probably good cause. So I would be interested if that could be addressed, to see that brought back with that caveat. And if it's not something that can be freely and easily addressed, I mean, the sandwich board signs is primarily what I've seen folks use, and it hasn't been problematic to this point, so that may be sufficient. I guess I'm looking out to my folks in the audience to talk to us if, after the meeting, not right now, but just to tell us if there is some other use that I'm missing here for flags and banners. But I would be interested in seeing if we could carve out an appropriate use that's limited to merchandising specifically, or sales. I would just be curious to see that.
And you mentioned the overlay, and I want to address that for the board also. You may be aware, you all will be seeing that come to you next month. I believe it's going to come next month. So we do have the Sidewalk Cafe overlay zone. The issue with that is the boundaries stop at 7th Avenue, right? So there are some businesses that are eligible to take advantage of it. There's some businesses that aren't. What is the Sidewalk Cafe overlay zone? That's a zone that's carved out downtown that allows for tables and chairs to be out in front of the business. And I'm summing up, it's a short summary of the ordinance, so long as ADA requirements are met, right? The issue is that the business that had tables and chairs outside fall outside of that overlay zone. So what you all are going to see next month, I've been in contact with them, talked to them and said, hey, there's this available, we need to extend these boundaries and get you in that. And so that's it has to go to the Planning Commission first. It'll go to the Planning Commission in October, and then you all will see that in October also. And what that'll do is that'll take care of Historic Perk and allow them to have their table and chairs back out, because that's separate from this. The proposed ordinance from last month has nothing to do with tables and chairs. That's squarely for restaurants and cafes and covered by the Sidewalk Cafe overlay zone. This is merchandise displays, decorative items, sandwich board signs, and all of the things that you all have mentioned here tonight. So hopefully that answered your question.
I just make a comment. I didn't want to fuss and for it. But it was very offensive to me, whoever called Fox News, for them to twist it as if though I want to just totally destroy growth downtown. So I've been a champion for a long time with the revitalization of downtown Springfield. And so it was very offensive to me, and I let them know that, okay? And for whoever's putting out all this stuff, come talk and let's reason together. Don't try to trash somebody who has always been pro downtown. And I'm saying it nicely, okay? All right.
I have a question. Is my memory correct? Aren't the codes that we submitted last month, are they not identical to what downtown Franklin's doing?
I think that language is borrowed. A lot of that language is,
Yeah.
it's tweaked.
Just to be
but
clear,
it's-
we love downtown Franklin, but we want to have that here too, so.
The majority of that language is borrowed from, there were a few cities surveyed. I think most of the language that was in the proposed ordinance last month was from the city of
I just
Franklin.
want to make sure I remember that correctly.
Not only Franklin, let me give you an example. Sparta, Tennessee is about the size of Springfield. And they have a nice quaint downtown area with those little sidewalk cafes and stuff like that. There's still enough room where the people that have disabilities can come with wheelchairs and stuff. So it could work. We just got to read this together and let tempers cool and let reasoning prevail. That's all I'm saying.
I have another question. So while we're letting tempers cool, at this point, we'd have to wait 3 more months for these merchants to be able to put anything out. Is that correct for the third reading? If we started over next month, it would still be 3 months. Is that correct?
How long would it take?
So that'd be October, and then that'd be November, so they would be able to put stuff out in December. That's really, really late for the retail world to be doing things for the holiday season. Is there any way that this board can
So my understanding, and I'm jumping in here, I think that if, and Lorraine, correct me if I'm wrong, but if our board is in agreement to move forward with modifications, then we can choose to not proceed with enforcing the rules as written when they are in process of being modified. I don't want to see we got to turn on that. I may not have said that well, but I think there is a way that we can make this work for the merchants.
You're not out of turn, because really and truly, the Christmas season starts in
Yeah.
about 2 weeks.
True.
And for them to get their products and stuff sold and all and stuff, so, Mr. City Manager, whatever we can do, let's do that.
Mayor.
Question when he's done.
Okay, so two things. First, we're talking about enforcement. Before that, we're talking about effective date. So it would be, and this is just a clarification, it doesn't change the ballgame that much, but the ordinance would be effective upon passage. So whatever the third Tuesday in November is, if you all did agree on something tonight that we could bring back in the form of a legislative document next month and pass on first reading and then pass on second reading in November, the effective date's going to be that night, upon passage on second reading. So it wouldn't necessarily have to wait till December 1st to be effective, right? Secondly, yes, there are times when the board signals an intent to change an ordinance. We're not going to go out and write a bunch of citations on that ordinance when we know the board no longer desires for that ordinance to be in effect. Now, we didn't write any citations last time either. It was, I called the chief of police and I said, hey, we've gotten complaints that we need to go enforce downtown. Can you just walk through, have some folks walk through and educate people on the sidewalk obstruction ordinance? And I believe that's what they did. Is just to kind of educate folks on, hey, this is our ordinance, this can't be there. So we would, with the consent and permission of the board, knowing that the legislative intent exists, we could do that, as long as we had clear direction from the board on what that was. I mean, what that enforcement needed to look like.
I think it could be done immediately. The chief and his officers, I think they're reasonable guys, and they'll go along with it without any enforcement actions until it's clear.
As long as there's no flagrant things done, okay?
Alderman Harris?
That we go back to the way it was, I don't think we have any business that's wanting to do anything right now that they weren't already doing before. And again, I go back to that point that would not have been enforced had the request not come to the codes department for these other 3 businesses for these items to be removed. That's what started all of this being enforced. I don't think anybody has a problem with going back like it was until we can get this worked out. If that member wants to remove their request on those other 3 businesses for that items to be removed, because the city manager had no choice but to enforce it throughout the whole area, because that was what was being requested.
To be clear, though, the reason why the whole thing has been brought up, because one merchant wanted to put some urns out, and the city said no. So if it's not fair for one person, it's not fair for everybody. That's why the codes have to be changed, or the codes have to be enforced. What's fair for one is fair for everybody.
So we're at the point we're at right now, that nothing can be done
Because y'all didn't pass anything last month. So, I mean, here we are.
Pass to that.
Let's all calm down a second. What can we do moving forward right now?
Hi, hearing from the alderman here, it seems to me that a big concern are the flags. So I would propose that, and I don't know if I need to make this in the form of a motion, but I would propose that we bring back the ordinance next month addressing the flags and the banners. If it's appropriate to have a carve out, we can. If not, then just take it all out, because I don't think that's been an issue
I agree.
at this time. To make the other things go forward, I think we can just remove flags and banners if that's not going to work. I think one other thing that Alderman Harris had mentioned being a concern are outdoor merchandising. I'm okay personally with the limitations that are in here. However, I'm open to discussion. I didn't know if any other aldermen have positions on that, or if we need to clean that up in this proposed ordinance before bringing it back.
Alderman Gregg?
Number one, I'm not anti-business. I realize that we need the tax money coming in. I'm not in favor of tables and racks because I don't want the street to look like a yard sale. The planters, the bistro tables, the signs, I'm not opposed to those, not at all. Anything that can help your business is great, but there's a lot more that was brought to us than what we discussed. We started talking about plants and planters and things, and then next thing we know, we've got a dozen things that we didn't talk about.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I'm in agreement with Alderman Holloman. I think we carve out what we think we need to remove and bring this thing back and go forward with it.
Mayor, can I make
Yes, sir.
a suggestion? Okay, everybody pull up that draft ordinance in your packet. Let's work through this real quick together. And if you look at, so let's start with section 16-802. I'm on page 3, I guess, of the document, okay? Section 16-802. If we strike number 1, number 2, and number 7, okay? And then we go to section 16-803, and we strike outdoor merchandise displays from subsections 1 and 2, and anywhere else that it appears. So it's in section 16-804. We can, if we just, because what I'm gathering from the board is we want downtown to look good and we want to support the businesses to do that. But so far, there's not a consensus on flags and banners. Flags and banners seem to be a concern in merchandise displays. Not that we can never do flags and banners or never do merchandise displays, but just to get something going in the meantime, right?
Yes.
And get something moving forward. If we just pass the ordinance that the board, pass the portions of the ordinance that all of the board members agree on and revisit the rest of it, you know, when there's more time to do so, how does, Mayor, I'd like to know how the board feels about us bringing that back next month.
But if we voted on it tonight, would that count as first reading?
It would not.
Would not?
It would have to be-
You have it in here, though, to discuss and possibly take action.
Correct.
So can we not take action on it tonight?
No, sir, because it requires legislative action, which must be done by ordinance, and the only ordinance we had failed last month, so we don't have an ordinance, a numbered ordinance for you to, that's just one of those.
Robert's Rule of Order. Technically, for reconsideration to be addressed, then a member of the prevailing vote would had to have made a motion last month to reconsider at that time. Effectively, our session closed at adjournment last month, so it does not qualify for a motion to reconsider.
Would the board consider just stopping everything then and let people put their sandwich boards back out in the meantime until we know with intent we're going to vote? To put their planters back out, to put their sandwich boards back out, to put their, I'm not sure what else has been moved, but their bistro tables back out. Would that be, everybody just act like we don't know until we get to vote on it? I mean,
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
I was about to say, it seems to me that was what our city manager kind of said we could do, is if we are clear, and it sounds that we are clear, perhaps that if we eliminate the outdoor merchandising on city sidewalks, and I emphasize that because I know there are some private sidewalks, and eliminate the flags and banners, then I think it sounds like our board is in agreement that we want to have this modified. We just needed to come back properly before this board for 2 readings. So then, city manager, would we not be able to say, let's not enforce this ordinance as written currently?
Thank you. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to address enforcement very briefly. So let's talk about the enforcement approach. So I've heard things, and I've talked to several business owners, I've talked to a lot of folks in the room. Well, why didn't you enforce this before? I think Vice Mayor Harris has pointed out why the visits were paid by the police department recently. We did enforce it before, okay? It was, and I don't want to, I'm not going to use, the selective enforcement is a bad term. I've heard that term used, that's a bad term too. The analogy I've given to some of you that are in the room that I've talked to and some that aren't in the room, the analogy I've given to you is it's kind of like going 32 in a 30. Is that a violation of the speed limit? Yes, it is, right? Is that where we're going to focus all of our resources to stop every vehicle that's going 2 miles per hour over the speed limit? No, it's not, right? What we're going to do is make sure that those folks that are You know, the folks that are creating an issue, right? And so that's where we were on the sidewalk enforcement. If you had a planter out and you were creating an ADA issue, we did not focus our resources on going and making sure we wrote you a citation and told you, you know, and that sort of thing. Because we wanted downtown to look good. There were tables and chairs out at a business that was outside the sidewalk cafe overlay zone. Now, we did have a couple of issues come up, particularly in the last few years, particularly on the west side of South Main Street, where the sidewalk isn't quite as wide, where there were some issues there with businesses, some aren't here anymore, that created an ADA clearance issue, and that's when we did go and enforce. So the ordinance and the code has been enforced. It's been enforced when there's an issue that created the need, right? And so I have no problem directing my staff to do that. But right now, the situation that we've been in is we've been paying visits to businesses, so.
So what do we need to do, just move forward now? What do we need to do?
I would suggest if kind of what I laid out a few minutes ago, with pulling some of those things out, if that's the direction that we can get from the board tonight to move forward, to push forward, if somebody, Mayor and Ms. Barty, I believe, wanted to put that in the form of a motion to direct us to bring that back next month, I think that would be proper. That allows us to get moving. That signals for us the intent of the board, the legislative intent, so we know how to handle the enforcement side of things over the next couple of months, right?
How do you want the amendment stated? A motion, per se. You got it? Go ahead.
I was going to make a motion, if I may, Mayor. I would motion that we take the draft that was presented to us in the last meeting, remove references to, or mentions of outdoor merchandise, remove that, and remove the flags and banners, unless that can be tailored specifically, and remove those, and bring us back a proposed ordinance next month.
Second.
I'll second it.
Hold on. Y'all click and take.
Hold on,
this.
she says.
Let's wait till she gets to the. Got it.
Do we need a new motion and a second? We need a second?
Hold on just a
Hold
minute.
on, she's.
Emily, will you hit amend?
Yeah, hit amend on your screen.
Okay.
It's not doing anything.
Hers is broke.
It's not letting her do
I think
it.
it's because the motions have already come up.
Oh, you've got it in. Yeah, she's got it.
Okay. Well,
You did it, you just didn't know you did it.
City manager, can I ask a question?
Okay, now somebody needs to hit the second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Holloman, a second by Alderman Bradley.
You have discussion, you have a question.
All question?
For you, Mr. Martin, would it not be possible for us to have a special called business meeting so we could skip another month after our first next month, passing that, and then come back the next week or whenever everybody was available? I'm not trying to hurt these people at all.
Yes, sir. I think that's a possibility. That's certainly at the will of the board if they want to do that. I think kind of what we've agreed on tonight is, again, not that we selectively enforce an ordinance, but if you all are going to change an ordinance and make something, and you've signaled that legislative intent, then that's the way we'll operate for the next 2 months anyway.
So,
I was just going to say, I think that's a really great idea, and if the board is interested in doing it, I will make myself available.
I would take it.
all right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any questions, comments?
So by doing this and what you're saying you're going to do, then this stuff in the last 2 weeks that was asked to be or told to be removed, it can go back?
We will not be, based on the legislative intent that you all are signaling tonight, we will go back to the way we used to enforce the sidewalk obstruction ordinance, which is basically to ensure the ADA clearance is met.
Are we all in understanding of the motion? Go ahead.
But just, Mayor, one more clarification. Now, were that to change next month and you all vote that down, right? Something were to change and a change of heart, then we would have to go back to enforcement of the sidewalk obstruction ordinance. But based on the legislative intent that I'm gathering from you all tonight, we will revert back to not focusing our resources on things that are out, so long as they don't create a material obstruction on the sidewalk.
Everyone good with that?
Okay.
Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yeah, Terry's ready to go home.
Let's cast our votes.
I gotta sweep my sidewalk off.
Anyone care to change their votes?
It is, but it's,
Everybody, would you tally the votes, please?
Motion passes 7-0.
Be disciplined.
Moving on to our consent agenda.
No,
3.8.
We got 3.8.
That's 3.8.
We have 3.8.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, 3.8 has been removed from our agenda for tonight.
All right.
Yes.
I move to accept the whole consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Hubble, we have a second by Alderman Bradley. Any questions or comments? We're ready to vote?
Kim,
Let him clear.
clear. Can't vote.
yeah, just,
No.
I was waiting for him.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Kim.
Good.
Ready?
Ready?
Yes, let's cast our votes.
What's your vote?
You've been censored.
Anyone care to change their votes? Tally the votes, please.
Motion passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for being with us tonight. Thank you, board members. Thank you to everyone.
City manager, you got a report?
Oh, I'm so sorry. We are not adjourned. City Manager Ryan Martin has
yeah.
his report.
Thank you, Mayor. That's okay. I know everybody's ready to go home. I'll be very brief. So just to give you an update on the Garner Street Playground, Garner Street Park Playground, we do anticipate that opening very soon. A lot of discussion. And, I don't do Facebook, but I hear there's some rumors on Facebook. And it was that we had the contractor replace some stuff. There were some things that were put in the part we opened the playground. There were some things that Mr. Martin didn't like. He asked me to come down there. We looked at it together. We didn't like it the way it was. It's not the way it was supposed to be designed, so we had them fix that. And so anytime you have that happen, it has to be re-inspected. So we were kind of waiting on the work to be done, and then we've got to wait on a re-inspection from the state. And I believe that's going to happen in the next week or two. So that playground's finally going to be open. As you know, Mr. Martin has extremely high standards, and I'm okay with that
That's
because
right.
he didn't like the way it looked, and I didn't like the way it looked either. It's not what we thought we were getting. So we're fixing that, and the contractor was acknowledged that, hey, yeah, we need to make this right. So we're doing that. Our sales tax revenue is coming in about 1.5% ahead of budget so far. We use that obviously as an economic bellwether, as an economic indicator for kind of how things are going. So it's not that's not the pace that we've seen in those 2021, 22, 23 years, but 1.5% is still ahead of budget. And finally, we have our final First Friday night market, or excuse me, First Friday event. I can't call it that anymore. First Friday event. Coming up on October the 3rd, 10-Year Town will be the band, one of our favorites for our First Friday goers. Happy to report, we finally got to have a First Friday. We almost got to have the whole thing. We almost got it in. But we're able to track the numbers of folks that come downtown. There was about 4,000 people downtown for that one, even though the weather didn't look great at times, and of course the lightning. And I know that some people left early because they saw the lightning coming, and we had Terry Martin go stand out with a lightning rod to draw the lightning away from the crowd. But hey, we're looking forward to that, hoping for good weather, because we know what that means to our downtown merchants. And what it does to the downtown economy, having 4,000 people all converge on downtown on an evening. So thank you all for your support for that event, and we look forward to having the last one here in a couple of weeks.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
citizens, remember, we work better together if we communicate one with the other, okay? Let's go, PJ.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
See that?
Oh, he's doing.